Welcome back, everyone, to Lindsay Live, coming to you from at least 6 feet away. We have a great show for you today. We're talking about connectedness. It is April 2020 at the time of this recording, and schools are closed because of a global pandemic. In a moment, we'll talk about some ways that Lindsay learning facilitators are staying connected to their learners in spite of these extreme circumstances. But regardless of whether we're in physical proximity with our learners or not, it is vitally important that they feel seen, heard, safe, and known. It is our responsibility as learning facilitators to build positive relationships with each of them and create a culture that empowers them to create connections with one another. In Lindsay, we believe that relationship building is the first step in setting our learners up for lifelong success. When we're intentional about creating connections with our learners, they develop trust and willingness to attempt new challenges. In difficult situations, they're more likely to approach us for emotional and academic support rather than giving up. The learner-learning facilitator connection is a two-way street that not only provides a foundation of trust and allows the learning facilitator to impact the learner's life, but also allows the learning facilitator to get to know the learner and adjust their instruction to fit the learner's unique needs, goals, and interests. This allows our LFs to truly personalize the learning experience and make it meaningful to each learner. But the learner-learning facilitator relationship is not the only important connection that happens in our learning environments. As educators, we also have a responsibility to serve as a role model and help our learners create connections with one another. In a successful learning environment, learners will build constructive and collaborative relationships and understand each other's unique strengths and opportunities. This will create an environment in which learners lift each other up and will elevate them to levels of achievement and understanding far beyond what they could accomplish individually. Today we'll hear from two learning facilitators who have successfully created well-connected learning environments here in Lindsay. Jonathan Bassett is a Content Level 7 learning facilitator at the Kennedy Learning Community, and Jeremy Jennings is a Content Level 8 learning facilitator serving at the Learning Labs at Jefferson. They'll call in to share insights and strategies for relationship building, as well as discussing the impact and importance of creating connections with and between learners. But first, let's take some calls from social media. On Facebook and Twitter this month, we asked Lindsay stakeholders to share some insights into how they've continued to build and maintain connections with their learners despite the physical closure of school buildings in the shadow of a global crisis. Every learning community has gone one-to-one, putting a mobile learning device in the hands of every learner. This gives them access to not only a world of academic information, but also to a caring and compassionate learning facilitator, committed to maintaining connectedness and making sure they continue to feel seen, heard, safe, and known, even in difficult times. Our first caller is Johann Urbaez, a blended learning assistant at the Reagan Learning Community. Johann?
Well, there are many LF who are doing wonderful things to stay connected with the learnings during these times of distant learning. One of them that I would like to highlight today is Ms. Beavers from Reagan Learning Community. Ms. Beaver is keeping her learners engaged and connected in various ways. She holds Zoom meetings twice a day, 2 days a week, where learners are engaged through whiteboard interactions and polling questions. And she also uses Class Dojo as a positive reward system and sends weekly videos, celebration, and shout-outs to all her learners. Another key to her success for staying connected to the learners is being connected to the parents by keeping them updated with relevant information. We know that during this time, 5th and 6th graders are having a hard time not being able to see each other. So she opens a Zoom meeting once a week where she's connected with them, where all they do is talk about life, all they do is talk about things that they're going through, and it just helps create a culture where they feel connected and happy at the same time.
Lincoln Learning Community Principal Tisha Larkin also called in to share the story of a special moment between the Lincoln staff and their learners.
The learning facilitators at Lincoln understand that relationships are the foundation of creating a safe environment for learners to take risks and explore new learning. And during this time of distance learning, relationships are foundational to learner success. So what we did was at the end of our professional development meeting, Mrs. Cortez gave each of us a word that we were put on a piece of paper and held up to the camera, and it spelled out the message, Dear Eagles, we want you to know that we love and miss you. We hope to see you soon. Love the Lincoln staff. And we've shared it on social media. I know the learning facilitators have sent it out via email to their learners. They've used Class Dojo, Instagram, lots of different ways we've gotten that message out. The idea for the Zoom message came from our content level 7 learning facilitator, Mrs. Gomez. And then she shared it with our counselor, Ms. Cortez. Ms. Cortez then made the coordination, and everyone was in. All of the staff members were really excited about joining and participating. And we realized that it's important for our learners to feel and know that we're still here for them, even if we aren't together physically.
Schools may be closed, but learning does not stop here in Lindsay. Nor do the relationships our instructors and staff continue to build with their learners. Great stories from the learning communities. Thank you guys for sharing. Follow Lindsay_USD on Twitter to stay connected with us and hear more about great stories like those. We've got Jeremy Jennings and Jonathan Bassett on the line in just a moment with much more, so stay tuned to Lindsay Live. Welcome back to Lindsay Live. I have Jonathan Bassett and Jeremy Jennings on the line. They've called in to talk with us about connectedness and building relationships with their learners. So thank you guys for calling in. Jonathan, I'm going to start with you. I've heard you say that getting to know your learners is your job.
Right.
Your primary responsibility is building relationships with your learners. Can you elaborate on that?
So I just believe that if I reflect back on my experience as a middle schooler, and I teach 7th grade, and so my experience was I had definitely had teachers at the time that I could connect with on a personal level because they took the time to get to know who I was and know my interests. And I went to a large middle school where we had probably about 500 kids that were enrolled, and so I was a dime a dozen. I was just another name to many, but there were those few teachers that took the genuine time to want to build a relationship, and with doing that, I look back at I've tried to apply that to my instruction, and it's so much easier. Just as a new teacher, I can't see how other LFs or other teachers wouldn't put that time in, and so for me, it's huge. It's a big factor in my instruction in my classroom.
So you talk about a difference between the teachers who reached out and really tried to make that connection with you versus the ones that made you feel like you're a dime a dozen. What is the difference? What do you do in your learning environment that is different or that you wish all of your teachers would have done for you when you were in middle school?
Every day we spend time introducing our day or beginning our day with just shout outs, just opportunities for them to vent. They bring topics up. I'll present topics for us to discuss. So we really spend maybe 15 minutes on it, but it's every day. It's just a part of our daily routine. Also, just peppered throughout the day, there are times where we just take a mental break and step back from instruction and laugh about something. We'll have a dance off competition, or we'll just take a break in the middle of math and do some meditative stretches. And there's a lot of kinesthetic movement to kind of separate it. And that's not necessarily something that I remember from my experience. It's just ways to get them to, I don't know, brighten their day.
Jeremy, we recently just released an instructional look for video on connectedness that featured your learning environment. And in that video, we see your learners throwing papers across the room in what looks like an indoor snowball fight. And this was an exercise actually designed to get learners to connect with one another around goals. Can you share the story behind that strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that paid off greatly in my learning environment has been the ability for the learners to have accountability partners. Their accountability partners are varied each week, and it normally starts through different activities, but one of their favorites is a snowball fight. And essentially what that is the paper that is crumpled up or numbered off so that eventually at the end of the snowball fight, the closest snowball to them, they'll pick it up, and that is their accountability partner for the week. What it does is it gets them just laughing and having fun at the beginning of the week, and it also gets them to start connecting with other learners and other peers that they wouldn't normally connect with, and finding ways to not only get to know people better, but also to help support them in their education. And so once they have that snowball fight and they pick up the closest snowball to them, they will meet with their accountability partner, and each of them is required to write their goal on a sticky note, post-it note. And the purpose of the post-it note is so that once they share their goal and they write their partner's goal down on the back of their post-it note, they then have to put that post-it note right next to their keyboard of their laptops or their Chromebooks. When they open it up, they see it every single day. And so we constantly reference that to go back to it, but it helps them kind of keep their goal in mind, but also helps them kind of think about, how can I push my partner to meet their goal for the week. And then that's not the only place they have it, but I found that when they have it front and center and they're always looking at it, they tend to change their attitude and their focus in their work. Then they will take that goal and actually input it in their online PLPs. But essentially, it was just a way for us to have some fun and get to know each other a little bit better, a little bit deeper, and find ways to support each other.
I think that's something we can all connect around, whether we're in the classroom or we're at the gym with a workout partner or with a coworker. We can all connect around goals. And both of you have actually used personalized learning plan websites to help create connectedness around your learners' interests and their goals. Can you tell us about those projects and the inspiration behind them?
Well, let me start so that way I don't have to follow Jeremy, because my idea was conceived from what he created last year. The kids kind of had full autonomy to build whatever they were wanting to put together on it. They had requirements. They needed to make sure they included their goal as well as their academic standing. But I felt that as we progressed through the year, their websites took on a different meaning to them. It started initially focusing on their academics and what their intentions were and their long-term goals. But it slowly started to morph into more a portfolio of who they were, more than what their academics were.
Yeah, and I can agree with Jonathan. These actually came out to be more like portfolios, online portfolios, which is really cool. We call them our online PLP, which is the personalized learning plans. And the learners in my classroom, when I gave them freedom to kind of name it what they'd like to, we were getting names like my journey to become a healthcare professional or whatever it may be. And it was really neat for them to see that they could have a place to put not only their short-term goals for their weekly goals, but also their long-term goals and how that specifically connects to what they want to do in life. And there was some freedom given. I told them to go ahead and personalize it. So what we would get is not just a place for them to go and put their goals, in academic stuff, because sometimes that can become just a check mark thing, like, okay, I did my online PLP for the day. But it turned more into like, hey, this is a place for me to actually take pictures of my success this week, some of the fun that we had. Maybe there was a crazy sock day or something, and then we took pictures and uploaded them there. And it became a place where they wanted to go to, and they could actually see real-time success being posted on their websites. Also being able to give those learners an opportunity to share it with the class. So they would randomly get selected, and if they wanted to share, and it was a way for us to get to know them better as well and see how we can actually move things around to help them meet their specific goals. So it was a phenomenal tool to see them engage in everything that we did, because it was meeting or going towards something that they desired in life.
So it sounds like in both cases, you went in with an idea of what this project could be, and it ended up, based on your connection with your learners, evolving into something completely, or at least a little bit different. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I believe so.
Yeah, it actually became, more learner-centered, and it was all about, them and what their goals were, as opposed to something that, was imposed upon them.
Another thing these websites undoubtedly do for you is allow you to collect data, as does your learning management system in Empower. How do you take that data and use it to build even deeper connections with the learners?
Well, for me, that data is crucial, because, again, we take that data and we can then reference a number of different places that their goals will connect to it as well. their goals have morphed from, where at the beginning of the year was, hey, I would like to do, this by this time, to now it's, hey, I'm gonna do this, and here's the reason why I'm gonna do it. Here's exactly what I need to get it done. Here's a skill that I need to learn this week to move towards that goal. And that's what that data really provides, is that honestly that real-time snapshot of where are you towards your goal and what are you doing with that. And then it's also a great way to then take their interest and their likes and their data and then create lessons that incorporates that stuff that will actually immediately impact their short-term and long-term goals.
Yeah, I think Jeremy hit it right on the head. I would say that the academic data is just only one part of building, and in using that and to connect with the kids more, just to help guide where we take that social emotional connection and where we can kind of build and apply it in their academics.
In building those social emotional connections, I know that's something that actually takes a lot of time, and I know that time is precious in your learning environments. So what are some intentional steps that you do to make time to make sure that you have that opportunity to spend time intentionally connecting with your learners, and what kind of impact has that had?
Any chance I get to hang out with the kids is an opportunity to build on the social emotional relationships. I'll go out and I'll play sports with the kids. I'm not opposed to diving for a volleyball, even though we're not known for having the best of quality of grass. I will skin a knee or two to stay in the circle. It takes a fair amount of time, you're right, but it's crucial. You have to be willing to get out there and connect with the kids. One of the things that I've done with my learners is, because time is a factor, we've started to utilize, especially in this virtual setting that we're in now, we've started to utilize email. I'm acting as a pen pal with my learners now. So we've got an additional data stream, if you will, of connecting with the kids that I can kind of interact with them via email. And it's been helpful as far as a sounding board for them dealing with this whole situation, not being in a tangible school setting.
Yeah, and I would tell educators that when they say they don't have the time for building relationships, I would say that it's actually one of those things that you definitely want to slow down to speed up. If you take the time, if you make the time to make those connections with your learners, they're going to buy into what you're doing. But they also, that trust is huge. Building that trust with their teacher, it's so important. This relationship that they have with us, we see them sometimes more than their family does, because we're with them, 7 hours a day. Just finding different ways to meet their needs, to actually have fun, whether it's starting a book club and providing donuts on Friday mornings for that book club, just to connect, and for those who like to read, or like Jonathan said, going outside and actually shooting some hoops with them, or bumping the volleyball around with them. Those are the things that they remember. Just like Jonathan mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, he remembers those teachers that took that time, and those are the lasting effects. And those are actually how we're going to develop lifelong learners, for those who actually go out and be positive contributing members to society and really make an impact in culture.
Jonathan, we talked earlier in the year about your strategy of taking 10 minutes out of your PLP time each day and dedicating it to one of your learners, to having a conversation one-on-one with one learner for 10 minutes each day. Can you just speak briefly to the value of those one-on-one conversations?
Well, I think it was huge. It was what I started with the beginning of the year. I would take 10 minutes out of the day, because it's crucial. It was crucial to find 10 minutes and make 10 minutes available to meet one learner a day, especially at the beginning of the year, getting to build that connection and them be able to see that their LF is genuinely interested in who they are. It started off in a very uncomfortable setting. It's never a smooth operation when you're wanting to get a 12-year-old to open up, but eventually they saw that my genuine interest in them wasn't going to go away, and that they just started actively participating, and it's all based on engagement and how real you're going to be with them. So we have a couch in my room that I make available, and for 10 minutes out of the day, I sit at the couch, and sometimes I'll prompt them with questions, or they just can open up and talk about whatever they want to talk about. More than not, they're ready to go. But there's a few that I have to guide through to where our 10 minutes spent together aren't just a grueling 10 minutes with Mr. Bassett. Rather, we just talk. I treat them like people. They may be preteens and teenagers, but they have genuine interests. They have concerns, and we just share our experiences, and it's made such an impact. There are a few kids those outliers that didn't start the year off with opening up, or maybe they didn't trust me to begin with. Those are the ones that I feel sitting at the couch with them, where they have my undivided attention for however long, and the conversation doesn't have to end at 10 minutes, but it's a great starting point. Those kids that hadn't bought in at the beginning of the year, those are the ones who benefited the most, that I saw the biggest growth and just connection that we've made throughout the year so far. Those are the ones that I'm going to continue this practice for.
Both of you take time at the beginning of each day to make sure that you greet every one of your learners. Tell me about why that's important and how it sets the tone for the day's learning.
Yeah, sure. To me, that's one of the most important parts of the day is, because first, you can gauge whether or not they're having a good day, or, there's something that you probably need to address or whatever it may be. But for me, it's meeting the learners at the door before they even come in. We have different rituals that we have with the learners. Some of us, I'm in this epic battle of rock, paper, scissors with one of my learners right now. It's even continued virtually. I am way behind, but I know I will catch up. But it's those little things, and I have someone who literally is trying to, give me the hardest high five ever. But it's those little things. It's like those personal connections. Not everyone's the same. Some people it's just a hello, greeting them by name, ask them how their day is. It really sets the tone and mood for the rest of the day. Especially, you can start seeing, some of those learners that are coming in a little bit unhappy. Maybe you make this, you set aside some time to connect with them and see, hey, what's going on? How can I help out? That way you can mitigate some of that frustration that then impacts their academics.
Yeah, it's definitely a gauge for the beginning of the day to see how they're doing. I honestly, Jeremy, until you had mentioned it right now, that wasn't ever something that I considered, but reflecting on it, it's huge. It's for some kids, they don't have any contact at all with anybody. Some kids, their parents are already gone by the time they leave home for school. Some parents, just might not be available. And so I think for some kids, that physical contact is huge. And I do high fives. I'll do fist bumps or knuckles, but I just feel that having that for the kids, it just sets the stage for them entering the room, crossing that threshold with a positive interaction right at the beginning.
If that greeting serves as a gauge to the way the learners are approaching the day, how do you make adjustments to your instruction based on that gauge?
For me, absolutely. Jonathan knows as well because, he's a 7th grade teacher. I teach 8th grade, and we're at that stage of life where sometimes the learners they're trying to figure out what's next, and especially in 8th grade as they're going to be going on to high school and figure things out. So they have a lot going on in their mind, a lot of emotions, a lot of hormones that are floating around there. If we can help them navigate that so that it doesn't impact their academics, but also just their future, by helping them make better choices, by approaching them differently. As far as the academics, just giving them a little leeway on those days that that they are struggling, even giving them permission to say, hey, if you want to write about that, feel free to write about that. How can we help out? As far as, academically, when you kind of have that personal connection, they're willing to go the extra mile. And when they know that you care, then it's interesting how a teacher can really have an impact on a learner who's having a bad day. Yeah, it's so important to make that first connection because it just sets the tone for the rest of the day.
I'm glad you bring up academics because there are a lot of teachers out there who might be hesitant to sacrifice their academic time in order to spend time building those connections. What would you say to someone who might have those fears? And have you actually seen a return on investment in terms of academics once you do take the time to build those connections?
I would strongly suggest that teacher reevaluate the relationships that they've set with the kids, because I personally would rather work harder for somebody that I know has my back, and I know at the end of the day takes genuine interest in who I am, I'd rather put forth my best effort for that person than the person who's going to come in and be negative, or maybe not even be negative. Negative at least implies that they have some feeling towards the kid. I think having someone just as an authoritarian in the classroom, I think that person, they've lost that connection, and so I think it would be natural for the student to not have engagement, or just the outcomes would then just be drastically affected. I would imagine. I've never been in that classroom, or at least never instructed in that classroom to know how the learner would be, but I can't imagine it being a vibrant or engaging room for any student to want to, any person for that matter, to want to put forth their best effort.
Yeah, I agree. When you look at sometimes I think teachers forget that they were once in the learner's shoes. We were once 8th graders at one point. We were once 7th graders at a point. What was going through our minds? And knowing that can then help us to really approach our learners in a way that's going to best support them. I've personally seen the fact that connectedness with the learners has absolutely increased the academics of my students. When I look at some of them, they're a little bit hesitant to share, but they forget that their PLP is shared with me, and so I can go in and find something that they do like, or talk about a picture that they did put up. And you would be surprised that the joy they have when you can just mention a small little win that they had in their goals, or something that they're interested in, and then it makes them want to work towards their goals even that much more when they know they have someone who cares. I would tell that teacher, give it a shot. Why don't you try making those personal connections? Take a step back. That whole idea of slowing down to speed up, and just see if you're going after goals and you're certain, certain data you want. I really feel that would be a byproduct of the relationships that you make with your learners.
I want to add on though. I feel that us saying to go out and make connections with our learners or with students, I feel like that teacher that isn't ready to take the risk, or hasn't taken the risk already, I think and they're not knowing where to jump off from. I would say that my experience has been the power in telling stories. I share my life with my kids at a personal level. They know who I am. They know my daughter. They know my dog's name. There's so much sharing that I've done with my kids that I'm sure at every grade level that the amount of sharing and the content that you share will be different, but based on their maturity but I feel that if you're looking for someplace to start, open up and share who you are just throughout your experience with them, throughout your time with them. That might be one way that you can bridge that gap and start that line of communication.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like that.
Definitely. It sounds like a great way to reach out to a learner who might not be as eager or as open to building a relationship. We know that every learner is different, and you even touched on this a little bit earlier in the podcast about how we don't always have an immediate connection with every single learner. So what else can you do in those instances where you know the relationship is going to take a little bit more effort to build?
To be honest with you, a learner can't get upset about you celebrating their successes. Even though a learner may be not as willing to open up and share, letting them know that you still have their back regardless of how much they're opening up to you is so important for the learner. And I do believe that they'll eventually come around. And so letting them know, hey, I know where you want to go in life. I know what excites you, what you enjoy. I know these things about you. And you know what? We're going to celebrate the things that I do know, because we believe in you and we know that you're going to do great things. They have no choice really but to say, hey, okay, I'm going to buy into this because they believe in me. And oftentimes they may not get that outside of school. And so it's so crucial that we break through those barriers, because oftentimes it's those kids, like Jonathan mentioned earlier, those that were hesitant to buy in. Those are the ones that you see the greatest impact when they finally do buy in. And it's because you're breaking down the barriers and you're providing something, that sense of normalcy in their life that they may not get at home. And so it's just so important to just keep powering through and letting them know, hey, we support you and we celebrate the little steps that you've done in your academics or just in your personal life.
Tell us about your celebration process. For those who haven't seen the video with the gong, tell us what that's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm working in a unique environment that is a learning lab where there's a number of learning environments connected together with minimal walls. And I have a gong in my classroom that when a learner has an achievement, it's really important that the whole, in our case, the learning lab, understands that people are meeting their goals and that we're celebrating them. And so the purpose of the gong is really to let the whole learning lab know that people are being celebrated, that people are meeting their goals, and it's to encourage others as well. So they'll just simply get up there and they'll share with the class the goal that they've met, and then they will hit the gong as hard as they possibly can, and then we all celebrate afterward. And it's a kind of a cheesy thing, but they love it.
That's so funny because in my room I have one of those dinner bells
Nice.
that they, for the same exact purpose, they ring it as loud as they can. It's nice. They get that super loud shock. They get as loud as they can, then the reaction is always great.
That's so cool.
Great stuff. Well, I want to change gears real quick because it is April 2020, and at the time of this recording, schools around the country, around the world really, are shut down in reaction to a global pandemic. The campus buildings are closed down. Learners are not physically attending classes. You don't get to see them every day face to face like you normally would. You don't have the volleyball games, you don't have the high fives and the fist bumps, but that doesn't mean that learning stops, and it certainly doesn't mean that you guys are going to stop building those relationships and creating connections with your learners. So how are things different today than they were a month ago, and what are the steps that you're taking to continue to reach out and maintain those relationships with your learners?
The connection is and also having a routine is so important for the learners. And so, day one, we were doing online Zoom meetings with our learners on an actual schedule. So at 9 o'clock every morning, we connect up and we still go through the process of talking about our goals at the beginning of the week. What do we want to accomplish this week? Talking about celebrations. Because if you jump right into academics, especially with something new, they kind of get lost. But what we've been doing every single Zoom call is I do an icebreaker with the learners, and I break them out into breakout rooms in Zoom so that they can actually share with each other. And it could just be random things. The other day we did an acrostic poem that talked about them. Today we talked about, just silly questions. If there's one thing you could eat right now, what would that be? And it gets them just connecting. And then they come back to the whole meeting to share out. I did a dance off. Jonathan mentioned that he did a dance off in class when they were in physical class. I actually did one online using the Sway app. It's a funny thing because someone who cannot dance like me can go on the Sway app and it makes you look like you're an amazing dancer, even if you don't have a dancer's body. So they find that funny. They had a lot of fun with that. And then also just doing random things. Every day I show up in a different persona or costume. Today I was Darth Vader. That's been fun for the learners to change their backgrounds as well, to just put themselves in a place that's different than where they currently are. And it gets them to open up, and they really love it. But ultimately, they really do miss the in-person connections. It's interesting to see.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jeremy, that the scheduling is crucial. I think without having a plan and just holding open business hours or open office hours with the kids is a little bit of a lost cause. You'll get kids that right now still want to take advantage of the opportunity to get to sleep in when they don't normally. And so fighting that urge by having a set schedule has been helpful. One of the things that I'm going to start when we get back from break is we're going to have scheduled PE, maybe yoga classes or cooking classes. One of the pieces of feedback I got from all my kids so far with this whole isolation experience has been that they are cooking a significant amount more. And so one of the seventh grade pushes for us in Lindsay is a Get Up and Move program, and in that they learn different nutritional tips. And so I think that'll be one of the avenues we go is just cooking and seeing where we can go with that.
Oh, that's so good. I really like that idea. You probably noticed this too, Jonathan, but the connectedness with parents as well has kind of skyrocketed. It's gone out the roof, because parents are kind of like, hey, what do I do? Like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for teaching our kids. They're almost apologizing sometimes. And I'm like, no, this is really good. They're getting to know their kids even closer. And, but the connectedness is like, hey, I'm actually connecting with parents greater than I ever did before. And it's a two-way conversation as opposed to just a one-way thing. And that has really helped out too, to connect it back to our learners, and now everyone's supporting the goal of the learner and moving it forward. It's been really neat.
Well, learning certainly is something that always has started at home. So why should it stop just because our learners are stuck at home? School may be canceled, but learning certainly not canceled, and building those relationships, creating connectedness, still alive and well here in Lindsay. Jeremy Jennings, Jonathan Bassett, thank you guys so much for calling in and being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
And once again, thank you all for listening. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and SoundCloud so you can join us next time for more insight and discussion from our educational experts, right here on Lindsay Live.